this idea of capability-based routing, using the right, what's the right model for the job, right? Like,
This one's definitely it's a pet peeve of mine. That so many people just grab the latest model, and literally the ones called latest can change under your feet, right? The providers replace them. So many people just choose a model, not realizing that it matters a ton. If you're writing code, if you're writing language, if you're expecting it to follow instructions, in those old westerns, I remember watching the Magnificent Seven back in the day. If y'all remember that, like,
mhm.
there's one guy that's a sharpshooter and another one that's the explosives guy that can crack the safe, and then there's the boss, and then there's always the one that can sneak in wherever he needs to be. Like these models all have very, very specific purposes, that they've been trained on, that they've been tuned on. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent making sure that this particular model is able to write really good narrative descriptions, right? Or that it's really nicely able to interact with humans quickly, right? So all these factors matter in terms of choosing your models out there. Like the whether it can stream back to you or not, right? In situations where it's running overnight and nobody's looking, I don't need a streaming model. But in cases where a user's sitting there waiting for it, they're gonna hit the big red stop button if they don't get in it, tokens flowing back really quickly, right? So every one of these things matters. And if you choose if you choose the wrong model, or choose the wrong problem, and then you choose the wrong model for that problem, then you have a very small chance of being successful, right? But if you choose them, both of those, correctly, it's like the combination locks. Eventually you're going to get a working solution that's rock solid and works really well. I mean, we wouldn't have sayings like divide and conquer if it weren't important to divide the problem in the right way and conquer it using the right tools, right? Then there's another one: use the right tool for the right job. These are engineering adages that have not changed, and LLMs don't change them. You're still trying to make solutions that are ultimately viable out there. Even in the agentic world, it even introduces another couple of layers, because there are models that are really good at keeping track of a to-do list. And that's exactly what an agent needs to do. If it's going to run on its own for an hour without you watching, you want a really good to-do tracker, right? The same thing, same way you would have a project manager in a large enterprise. You want to have a model that knows how to go down that list and check off what's been done and scream about things that aren't being done, to make sure that the overall agent is handling it correctly, right? It's another part of this whole capability-based routing that's needed, and it needs to happen. Like, a user may say one thing, and that's going to result in 10 different model turns that may every one of them be a different model, right? And every one of those model turns could be a tool, or one or more tool calls, which may end up being 100 different tool calls that are occurring for that one thing the user said. So getting these layers correct is really the way that you get to a scalable solution. And if you want it to autonomously run on its own and do all of this activity, then you're going to need to make sure the unit test, meaning each individual turn of an individual model, is perfect at the job that you have assigned to it.
Yeah, and so Mike, I love that point. Just to build on it, there is no substitute for deeply understanding the business process where these models are going to be um, deployed, right? And so that's really what you're talking about, and understanding the nuances of, you wouldn't put Yadier Molina catcher for the Cardinals in center field, right? You wouldn't put these models out of position. And so the only way you can really know where to put Yadier Molina is understand his skill set, understand what the models can really do, and understand what center field really means in the business, understand what catcher really means, what are the responsibilities, what roles are they going to play, and then you marry those two things up, and that's really the point you were making.
And I think yeah, there tend to be a few ways, I think, to break this down too on the models, just in terms of thinking about it. Uh, One is, do you need reasoning or not? Right, is very important in these model selections, and so, and every big model company has reasoning models and the non-reasoning models. So the reasoning models are kind of go through, uh, the non-reasoning models are maybe easiest to think about. You put in a set of inputs, it starts doing math, and it just goes, picking one token after the next and gives you a response. The reasoning model is actually going to first apply some thinking process around the approach that it wants to take before it comes back with a response, which requires extra time and tokens and money and everything else. And so I think that's the first thing to look at. Then the second thing is, what capabilities are you expecting from the model, right? And you've got to see, one is how much are you taking advantage of world knowledge from the model, right? Versus kind of what I would call word cell capabilities, right? Like right? A word cell type person would be someone that is really good at manipulating, words or other sort of things quickly, right? Into clever ways, right? That's one thing. The other thing is the person who knows everything about everything, right? And has ingested all of this information about the world. And so there are some simpler models that are much smaller, much easier to run, can even run locally on your PC, that are really good word cells, right? They're really good at just manipulating language. But they might not. But they might not tell you, what the capital of Albania was in 1547 if it's different from today, right? So because they might not have ingested all of that sort of stuff. So I think that type of, one, just looking at those two angles, then you really get into, Coke versus Pepsi discussions on, which is the best coding model, which is the best writing model, which is things along those lines really come into play for the, and then maybe that's more like the pitcher versus catcher type analogies. But I think you got to really look at those two or three different things and get a feeling for the landscape that's out there. And then have the technical infrastructure to pull it off, which is, tricky at scale.